How you doing? How you doing? If you've been chasing the Eagle Bearer or Ravenous but never really wanted to deal with the normal Dark Zone or the raids, this might actually be the best time to go for them. In the new Toxic PvE Dark Zone, the hunters now drop a guaranteed exotic component, and they have a 2% chance to drop either the Eagle Bearer or Ravenous on top of that. I got the Ravenous on literally my first day in the zone, and then pulled the Eagle Bearer just a few days later, both within the first week. And this is consistent with what I experienced in the player test server prior to launch as well. I got the Ravenous literally on day one within the first few extractions. Now, I know 2% doesn't sound like great odds at first, but let's put that into perspective. In the regular Dark Zone, the chance of a raid exotic dropping is somewhere around 0.05%. So this is actually a massive improvement. And the best part, you don't have to worry about getting hijacked or dealing with toxic PvP players. It's just you, the zone, and the hunters. I know many people think that the Eagle Bearer is a trophy gun, and it's not really worth running in PvE gameplay. I'm usually in that camp too. But this season, the Eagle Bearer shines, and I have a few builds coming your way ASAP, so look forward to those. Make sure you get this weapon. A lot of people are sleeping on this tactic right now, and I think that's a mistake. So let me break down exactly how to farm this efficiently and what I've learned after spending a good amount of time in there. And as a bonus, I got a couple of really good Dark Zone PvE builds for you. Lock and load. Let's do this.
I'm the last man in the Dark Zone. Bag full of junk, call it backbone.
Wait.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
Bandidos, what up? Your boy Tux with the Division 2. So here's how the Toxic PvE Dark Zone actually works when it comes to these exotics. To spawn the hunters, you need to call an extraction. But before you can do that, you need a Stabilization Agent. These drop from landmark chests and bosses, and they have roughly a 33% chance to drop. Once you have one, you can finally call the chopper. When you do, hunters will spawn in. The more players that are in the extraction zone with you, the more hunters that show up. The more hunters that spawn, the better your odds of getting the Eagle Bearer or Ravenous. Every single hunter is guaranteed to drop an exotic component, and they also have that 2% chance at one of the two raid exotics. So every stabilization agent you get is basically a ticket to roll for some of the best weapons in the game. And here's something that's cool. Even if you don't have a stabilization agent or anything to extract, if you're near an extraction zone and somebody else calls for an extraction, you can piggyback on that, fight the hunters, and get your Eagle Bearer or Ravenous that way too. What I really like about this is that it removes the biggest downsides of farming these guns in the normal Dark Zone, the PvP risk. You can just focus on the fight and the loot without constantly looking over your shoulder. Now, here's the most efficient way I found to farm these hunters. First, you want to be in a full or near full Toxic PvE server. One of the easiest ways to check this is by looking at the alert level in the top left corner. The higher the number is, the more players are in the zone. I try to stay in servers that are pretty populated because that directly increases how many hunters spawn when you extract, assuming some of those agents are in the zone with you. Otherwise, I try to stay in servers that are pretty populated because that directly increases how many extractions are called per hour and greatly increases how many hunters spawn when you extract. Once you're in a good server, focus on farming the highest difficulty landmarks you can comfortably do, like challenging and heroic. These have a much better chance of dropping stabilization agents, both from the chests and the bosses. As soon as you get a stabilization agent, extract immediately. Do not hold on to it. Every single agent represents a chance at a raid exotic, and you can only carry one at a time, so there's no benefit to saving them. When you call the extraction, I recommend sticking to perimeter cover and waiting for the hunters to come to you. Because of dynamic scaling, the more players extracting with you, the harder the hunters become. So playing aggressive usually isn't the move here, except I got some tricks up my sleeve I'm going to share with you too. So stay tuned for that. There are a few important things to know about these hunters. They jam your skills the very second they spawn, so be ready for that. They also run turrets, drones, and hives, and they love to throw them over your head behind you, which means you need to be ready to move in case that happens. And do not run any attack skills against them. They'll just hack them and turn them against you. They can also heal themselves and do so usually by running real fast back in cover. So you want to try and pressure them when they try to do that. Grenades are helpful here. For the skill disruption thing, you have a few good options. You can stack 100% hazard protection to prevent this, or build disrupt resistance, sort of the same thing. You can run technician with the Faraday protocol and drop your hive right next to you just before they spawn. One of the strongest tricks I've been using is the invincible active modifier. As soon as the hunters spawn, I run in, and when I get close to them, I activate it. You get 99% damage resistance for a short time. So I just face tank them until they die. When the buff ends, sometimes I go down from the damage that got applied while I was invincible, but my hive is there, so it revives me. It's simple, but it works really well. When you're running the Toxic DZ, your modifiers matter more than people think. For passive modifiers, Inoculated is critical. This is going to slow down your toxicity buildup by 50%. And the munitions belt is going to increase your munitions by 200. And for the third one, up to you, but I like Viper Bite. That puts poison on enemies after every 4 kills. For active modifiers, the invincible trick I mentioned earlier has been my go-to for the hunter fights, but also in case I get in a pinch during landmark engagements. Here's another pro tip. After you extract, you empty your bag, you have nothing you need to get out of the DZ. If your toxicity is over 350, just kill yourself as fast as you can using the nearest NPC. This resets your toxicity and lets you choose your next spawn point. Ideally, you want to spawn close to a good landmark so you can get right back into farming. This saves a ton of time and greatly increases your exotic components per hour. One last thing, other exotics can drop in the DZ too. Do not deconstruct them until you extract. They won't give you an exotic component unless you actually extract them first. Let's look at the toxicity debuffs, because I mentioned that once your stacks get to 350, it's a good time to get out of there. So let's look at why. So when you're below 100, you don't have to worry. But once you hit 100, you're going to get a reduction in reload speed and weapon handling. So basically, that's a combined 30% reload speed hit. That hurts. When you hit 200, you're now going to be taking 20% increased damage and 30% more status effects. So that disrupt from the hunters is going to last longer. When you get to 300, the enemies are going to notice you. You're going to get a 100% increase in threat. So that means the enemies are going to notice you more. It'll be harder to sneak around. And you're going to lose 10% of your movement speed. So your reaction speeds are going to be slower. The enemies are going to notice you more, start shooting at you more. You're going to take more damage, and your hazards are going to last longer. And there's a modifier that makes you dizzy when you're hit with a bullet, and then the horrible reloading. But once you hit 400, then there's a 15% chance that you're going to be disorientated for 2 seconds when taking damage. Things just become painful. And when you lose a valuable bag of contaminated gear because you go down, it hurts. And it's really rare that you're able to recover that because you usually have to jog back and somebody else will have stolen it. So getting out of there around 350 stacks is going to help prevent that pain, but also just juice up your efficiency. Okay, let me show you how to fight back-to-back hunters for consistent exotic component drops and just best chance at getting those raid exclusives. Now, you want to stick around for this part of the video because there's genuinely some really good tips here. Let's show you some actual. So I just completed one landmark already. We're now in the process of doing the second one here. And I did load in with a stabilization agent from earlier, but I didn't actually realize I had that extra one. We're all good here. So we're just going to clear this landmark and pick up our loot. I basically deconstruct all the loot. I don't even look at it. It's rare that I'm going to get something I actually need. Dark Zone exclusive stuff does drop, but it's never really any good. Either way, so these landmark caches are what we're actually after. These have a 30% chance, give or take, of dropping that stabilization agent. I couldn't pick that one up because you can only hold one stabilization agent. That's why when you have one, extract. But here's the catch. But you have to have something in your bag in order to call the extraction, even if you have a stabilization agent. It could be just a random piece of gear or a full bag. It doesn't matter. I just make a mental note that I have that stabilization agent sitting on the floor for me, and loot basically stays on the ground for about 30 minutes. There's some other dudes already here, but it doesn't look like anybody's called an extraction, but there's a hunter on the ground, which means somebody probably lost a fight earlier and the hunters are still just kind of roaming. So, because I can call an extraction if I want to. So I'll go ahead and finish this engagement because why not free hunter, right? So now the hunter's down. So there's a couple of things here strategically you can do. You can wait for the other guy to call in the extraction, and then you can save your stabilization agent and then call an extraction immediately after he does. So I'm kind of sitting here to see if he's going to call it, and he does. So great. So I get to save my stabilization agent, and I'm not robbing him of anything because I'm going to use mine right after as well. So then I activate my invincible and I just face tank this dude, and he managed to get his heal off, which kind of sucks because he should have been dead. And then because he hit me with that axe, it means I'll probably go down, but that's okay because we have our hive, and that's the strategy here, just to do this real fast. Now here's the trick. Pay attention to this part, this detail. So that hunter drops this piece of gear right here, but I'm not going to pick it up because, like I said, in order to call in an extraction, you need to have something in your bag, and I want to get rid of my more valuable loot because I have some sample canisters in there. Now that I put that on the hook, I can grab this piece and I'll just deconstruct it. So it's 1 DZ credit now sitting in my bag, and I have my stabilization agent because that other guy used his, right? So I can get back in cover, and what we'll do is just wait for the helicopter to leave, and then we'll call in the extraction. Now, sometimes the other dudes will bail because you actually don't have to wait for the extraction, but if you're farming hunters, then you're going to be loitering here. Okay, so the helicopter is gone, but the extraction zone is still blinking. So there's kind of like a cooldown on it. You have to wait for that to be solid state. Once it is, I'll be able to call in the extraction. So just to show you here in my resources, there's my stabilization agent. And then I have 1 item in my contaminated loot. I'm now eligible to call in another hunter. So let's go ahead and do that. So I timed it out right. So my hive is about to come back here and it won't be jammed. And then I have my invincible. So I'm going to turn that on and then just face tank him again. The exotic component I picked up and we're good to go. Here's the trick. Remember, we made that mental note that we have a stabilization agent back waiting for us, and it's just like a block away. So what I'm going to do here is head back to that spot, pick it up, and head right back to the extraction zone. And we have something in our bag. It's a piece of junk, but it allows us to call in another extraction. So by the time I get back here, there's a crew hanging out here. There's 3 guys. And I'm going to wait to see if they use their stabilization agent. They're not. So they either don't have one or somebody's waiting for their cooldowns. I don't know if they're in a squad or not. It doesn't look like they are. So I'm going to go ahead and just call it because I don't know what the fuck they're doing. But if I was patient, I could have waited and used their stabilization agent and then used mine right afterwards, because a lot of people don't know this strategy. So I got surprise jumped by this hunter, but that's why we have invincible. Works really well for these hunters. Just be bold. That's the idea with it. Don't use it and then hide and cover. Use it and then get out there and kill them. So we got a couple exotic components right there. And then since we took a lot of damage, we went down. That's okay. And there's 1 final hunter here. So there's 3 hunters that we have to finish. And there it is. And I got a Ravenous. Easy. RNG is a factor here. So what I did didn't guarantee me a Ravenous. But by doing back-to-back extractions like that, I'm greatly increasing my odds. At the same time, I'm farming exotic components. And this is just super fast. Now at this stage, I'm at 251. So I got a couple of options. I can continue to fight, or I can just wipe and clear off my toxicity and start the loop again. Do it this way and you'll get your Ravenous and Eagle Bearer in no time. So I've been running a few different builds specifically made for taking down these hunters, and I want to show you the ones that have been working for me the best. Now, real quick, the builds I've been using focus on high survivability, decent crowd control, and strong single target damage, so you can burn the hunters down before they overwhelm you with skills and pressure. But these builds also need to be efficient at clearing those landmarks, because you're spending way more time taking on the landmarks than you are dealing with the hunters. Okay, here's a real simple hunter killer build you can put together pretty easily. It's going to be centered around the Scorpio exotic shotgun. It does extremely well against the hunters. Now, primarily it's about septic shock. You hit the enemy twice, they're going to get poisoned, 4 times disorient, 6 times shock. So all status effects. When you manage to hit them 9 times, the target takes additional 20% damage. That's all amplified damage, and that is from all sources. So if there are allies around shooting at that hunter, he's going to go down real fast thanks to you. Now the thing is, when you go to an extraction site, there's not usually NPCs there waiting for you to build up additional buffs and stacks like Striker or Heartbreaker or whatever else. So you want something that's just ready with the damage. And that's what Hunter's Fury brings to the table. So we got 15% shotgun damage, 20% armor on kill, which we're not using for this, but those things are great for the landmarks. But we're after Apex Predator. So just for standing, or when you start to shoot the hunter, you're going to be within 15-meter range. And so you're going to get that 20% amplified damage debuff. Now, if there happens to be other hunters around, then you're going to get another 5% amplified damage that you're going to be able to carry over to the next hunter. And the chest piece is going to help there. The chest piece brings endless hunger. So this increases the duration of the Apex Predator stacks, which are 5% amplified damage stacks. That's stacked 5 times. It's going to buff that from 10 seconds to 30 seconds, which is actually very helpful. You can also run Obliterate here, but we've added some survivability elsewhere, which is why we're running the chest piece. And to finish off the set, we're running crit chance and weapon damage. I am running this all red on purpose. We'll talk about that in a second. And a weapon damage and crit damage on the knees. Crit everything out to 60% and then roll everything else to crit damage. Now the backpack is special. This is called the setup. I have mine with weapon damage. You can run armor here, no problem. Perfectly opportunistic. So this is going to synergize with the shotgun. So enemies you hit take 15% more damage. That's amplified from all sources for 5 seconds. So you got 15% amp damage there. 20% amp damage there, another 20% amp damage there if the enemy still happens to be alive, which they're usually not. We're running all red, so where does the survivability come from? So what Technician is doing is allowing us to take advantage of something called Faraday. So party members within 5 meters of your deployed and undisrupted skills are immune to shock and disruption, so we're using our hive for that. So before I call in the extraction, I just set down my hive. That helps us stay immune to that. Then we got the 20% armor on kill coming from this. So you need to add some survivability because this is more than just the hunters we're dealing with. You have to be able to clear landmarks efficiently. That 20% armor on kill is greatly helping us there. When we get in trouble, the Exodus gloves are going to back us up. When your armor breaks, you're going to get that smoke screen, and this is going to refill your armor up to 100%. Just sort of depends. Otherwise, it's got crits. So we don't normally use this against the hunters. Not really necessary because we're killing them so fast. But for the landmarks, in case you get swarmed, this is very helpful. So the thing is, landmarks can be confusing and the enemy spawns are all over the place, right? So you're gonna swap from playing from cover to out of cover. So when I'm playing from cover and having to shoot enemies at range, I have my assault rifle for that. So I use Lud because it's gonna bring in perfect streamline. At that time, obviously I wouldn't be using either of my skills. So Streamline would kick in and help compensate for the enemies outside of our Apex Predator debuff. That's gonna happen from time to time. So the extra damage will help there. Otherwise, you're going to try to get in range and then whip out the shotgun. And most enemies will die between 1 and 4 shots, I guess, just depending on the enemy. Just beware, the reload time is at 1.82 seconds now, but this can get quite slow when you start stacking on those toxic debuffs. But pretty straightforward build. This works wonders. I'm able to kill that hunter really fast, and the modifiers are going to matter in there. There's no reason to not run modifiers, to be honest with you, when you're inside of this zone. You're going to have all of these buffs kicking in, which is nice. And then I'm running Invincible. Now you want to kick this on literally at the last second because it'll replenish your armor bar. So if you had taken damage, you're going to get fully repaired. And then feel comfortable face taking the hunter. Still try not to take damage if you can prevent it by popping up your shield. Have your shield up anyways, but smash that hunter down with the Scorpio shotgun. It gives you confidence just to face tank him. And then if you did take damage and it was enough to bring you down, then your armor's going to break and it'll take you down, but the fight's over at that stage and you have your hive to pick you up. It's rare that happens, but it can happen. And when you're in a pinch in one of the landmarks, go ahead and use this too. I mentioned earlier, you want inoculated and then Spark and Flame. This is going to increase your status effects by 30%, and then Contagion, which is going to give 40% more damage from all sources to the enemy, which is pretty cool. This 30% status effects is mostly going to be from things like your debuffs coming from Hunter's Fury. Scorpio doesn't run off of status effects. It runs off of how many pellets are hit. And for our friends looking for something a little more on the defensive side, I got you a tank DPS build that works just really well in the Dark Zone. It's point and shoot, stack a bunch of defense, hammer down the enemies, run and gun. It's nice. So this is a 4-piece Heartbreaker build. So you get assault rifle damage, weapon handling, and then the Heart Stopper, which is going to give you 1% bonus armor and 1.1% weapon damage to pulse to enemies. Up to 50 stacks. We're going to bump that to 100 stacks with the chest piece. So you got 100% bonus armor there and 110% weapon damage. Just roll crits everywhere. Just get them relatively balanced. Get as close to 60% as possible. And then we got a lot of armor here. You can play with the armor values, but this actually worked really well in there. And then everything else is just armor and crits. So I'll quickly show you that. The backpack is really important. I tried a few variations, and I think this one is probably going to serve you best because you're always in these tight little scenarios. Enemies are rushing you. They're spawning behind you. And Adrenaline Rush constantly refreshes. Whenever you are within 10 meters of an enemy, you're going to gain 20% bonus armor for 5 seconds. And that's going to stack up to 3 times. And you've got a lot of armor here. So this is a lot of bonus armor, constantly refreshing. Also really helpful for the hunters who rush you with their axe. You're going to quickly get some bonus armor to help mitigate a little bit of that damage. And then we got some armor regen that's just helping in the background. It's a tiny bit. You get so much bonus armor. It's enough. The gloves are actually really helpful against the hunters, the overdogs, because they're the only enemy. They are the weakest enemy and they are the strongest enemy. So you're only going to be getting the tier 1, which makes them the weakest link. And you're going to get that 30% amplified damage from those enemies. You're going to want to run Technician, and I'm running the Stack Broker for this, but any ACS 12 will work. And I'm really liking the back and forth talent on this, but I do use it as a main, so I'm not always picking up the benefit from this, but I often rotate, and this can pick up a little bit more rate of fire and weapon damage when you do that. And then make sure you have the laser pointer. And so for the hunters, you definitely want to make sure you're taking advantage of the back and forth perk, and then you rush them, swap to this weapon, and just hammer them down really fast. This one I did prototype. You don't have to prototype it, but it's one of my favorite weapons, so I went ahead and did that. And then the Agitator is my other weapon. So when you need to park it and take out some enemies at range beyond your shotgun's reach, this is really helpful. It also benefits from weapon swap, and it's going to get 25% rate of fire and 30% weapon damage when you swap to it once it's primed. So you have to make sure it's stowed away for at least 10 seconds. And when it is, you're going to get 50% less threat when you're running around with the shotgun, which is nice. And then I have the quick step. We are at 50% crit chance and 105% critical hit damage. So that's the current state of farming Eagle Bearer and Ravenous in the Toxic PvE Dark Zone. It's honestly the best opportunity most players have ever had to get these exotics without having to deal with PvP. The guaranteed exotic components alone make it worth running. And the 2% chance at a raid exotic on top of that is honestly pretty generous compared to how rare these guns normally are. If you've been putting off going for the Eagle Bearer or Ravenous, now's honestly a really good time to do it. Drop a comment if you've already pulled one in the Toxic DZ and let me know how many extractions it took you. I'm curious to see how other people are doing with it. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. If this one landed right, do me a favor and drop a like and subscribe. Totally helps. And if you want to catch the next one when it drops, just flip on notifications. Big thanks to all the channel members and everyone supporting the channel. You guys are the reason this community keeps growing stronger every day. I'm so proud. Oh, yeah, if you're digging the music and want access to those really cool gamer music playlists and weekly beat packs, Tux's Players Club is always open. Just hit join or check the link in the description. No pressure though. I seriously appreciate you being here either way. If you're not ready to join but still want to check out the music, I've got a public playlist you can listen to right now. Links in the description. Catch you in the next one. Later.